My name is Ashley Gardella, and I'm a clinical social worker at Children's National Hospital. As a therapist for children and parents in the Child and Adolescent Protection Center, I've seen up close how a parent's childhood trauma can impact how they respond to and parent their children. Trauma-informed care in the pediatric setting especially must extend not only to the pediatric patient, but also to their caregivers. This panel on parenting as survivors will be facilitated by Mr. Dion Brown. Good morning. Mr. Dion Brown is a licensed therapist in the state of Maryland and the District of Columbia. He has been providing mental health services to teens, adults, and couples for over 15 years. Presently, he is a licensed clinical professional counselor, a licensed clinical addiction counselor, and is certified in trauma work with the International Association of Trauma Professionals. His academic endeavors include a bachelor's degree from Towson University in clinical psychology, a master's degree in counseling psychology from Loyola University, and a certificate in chemical dependency from Dundalk Community College. Mr. Brown is the CEO and founder of his own thriving counseling practice entitled DJB Therapeutic Solutions. This therapeutic practice provides services such as individual therapy sessions for teens, adults, and couples, mental health and substance abuse evaluations, consulting services, corporate workplace wellness training, ministry readiness evaluations, as well as over a dozen signature presentations for secular and religious entities. His practice also focuses on the integration of spirituality, mental health, and community, and the way those dimensions interact. Mr. Brown is known as the self-care therapist. As a result, he focuses on helping individuals, professionals, companies, and leaders improve their own self-care through practical tools and tips. Consequently, in 2022, Mr. Brown became an author and released a best-selling book entitled Non-Negotiable Self-Care. This book is a one-stop shop for all things self-care related in a variety of settings and multiple demographics. An array of practical tips are applied in this book in a simple-to-read format. Mr. Brown is a well-sought-after speaker, working to educate, inspire, empower, and motivate others in the care of their mental health and wellness. Welcome, Mr. Brown. Martin Copeland. Martin Copeland III is a native of Washington, D.C., was raised in Prince George's County, Maryland, by two professional, loving, God-fearing parents. Martin and his twin sister, Marcia, however, endured what is unfortunately common for many children, a secretly violent home. On the surface, the Copeland family was happy, active, and faithful. In reality, the family dealt with the stress of life in the dark, unhealthy ways. As an educator for the past 20 years, Martin has worked to prepare students for post-secondary opportunities in college access, workforce development, and youth mentoring. Martin's professional work is to provide any support necessary to bridge his students to healthy, happy lives. His personal work is to heal his own traumas and to confront his own unhealthy parenting habits so that his two sons, Jackson and Jet, have healthy, happy lives. Welcome. Ron McCray. Ronald J. McCray is an international speaker and best-selling author of Is God Who He Says He Is, and contributing authors of Echoes, the stories of male survivors overcoming sexual trauma. He is the regional director for I Am Man Incorporated. As a survivor and advocate himself, he is committed to helping others walk into their identity and purpose. Ronald's heart is to see people's lives restored, and he's using his writing, speaking, and music to bring hope and healing to those who need it the most. Among all of his accomplishments and global media appearances, he prides himself on being a husband to his wife, Fatima, and father to their son, Alexander. Welcome. Chris McElroy is a biracial, Black, autistic, trans man living with multiple disabilities and chronic illnesses. Chris is a human service professional, public speaker, writer, artist, and advocate living in Maryland with his wife and daughter. Since 2009, Chris has been a dedicated human service professional, serving in many different capacities to support various communities. Additionally, he has been a cast member of the Telling This Truth theatrical production for trauma survivors, has self-published several books and workshops, and continues to take part in speaking engagements and art shows across the country. Chris earned his bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of Maryland and his master's degree in multidisciplinary human services from Capella University. Currently, Chris is working on a new project to create resources for parents living with disabilities and neurodivergent parents. Welcome, Chris. Janae Jones. Janae Elizabeth Jones has been the manager of Connected Schools serving the Moton Elementary community since fall of 2020. Prior to rejoining DCPS, she founded Dance Dynamics, a multi-site dance studio which provided dance education to over 500 students in a premier private studio and throughout local community centers in Prince George's County, Maryland. Before Dance Dynamics, she was chief operating officer and then managing director of Merge, a youth development nonprofit. Additionally, Janae has an extensive background in special education and served as an applied behavior analysis consultant in the DC metro area, as well as dual certified early childhood special education with DCPS. She was also a literacy cooperative fellow for the Department of Education. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration from the University of Maryland and a Master of Education in Human Development and Early Childhood Special Education from George Washington University. Janae resides in Maryland with her husband and bonus daughter. When she is not volunteering or eating in local restaurants, she enjoys coaching creative entrepreneurs who sit in the CEO seat through her company, Maximize Your Mission, LLC. Welcome, Janae.
Good morning, everybody. How's everybody feeling this morning? Good morning. We are glad to be here, be with you all. Let's give Mr. Marshall a round of applause for that wonderful morning session. As stated, I am Dion Brown, a licensed therapist, self-care expert, founder of DJB Therapeutic Solutions, and best-selling author of Non-Negotiable Self-Care. I'm excited this morning to be with you all, and I want to thank Dr. Jackson and her staff for putting this wonderful event together. Let's give them a round of applause. Let's thank these wonderful group of panelists that have volunteered their time, efforts, and energy today as well. Before we begin, I just want to give a slight disclaimer. Being a licensed therapist in the Maryland and DC region, one of the things that I tell my individual clients constantly is that, therapy can have very good benefits and outcomes for you, but it is a journey. It is a process. There are benefits as well as challenges, maybe experiencing some rough patches, some distress at times, some tension. I just want you all to know we're going to really dive into a lot of material related to family violence and childhood abuse and trauma and various things. And some of that may unearth some distressing emotions, some difficult, challenging internal emotions for some of you. If you need to step out momentarily, that is perfectly fine to excuse yourself. But we are going to look at this from a number of perspectives. All right. So we all ready? We ready? Everyone ready? All right. Good. There was already a wonderful introduction of the panelists. So what we're going to do, we're going to start with having each panelist address the question, what inspired you, motivated you, encouraged you to deal and talk with and about this topic. And we'll start to my right with Mr. McCray.
Good morning, everyone. What inspired me to participate in discussion as it relates to this topic is, one, myself being a survivor. I have found that in sharing my story, I am able to be a voice to those who may be voiceless, those who may be suffering in silence. And so I found that sharing my story has been not only healing for me, but healing and helpful for others as well. And so I see opportunities to share as a means of helping those who may be in the field, who provide support to individuals who are survivors, and also to inspire survivors themselves to know that there is hope beyond the effects of their trauma.
Thank you. Ms. Jones?
I gotta go after that. That was good. So I'm gonna keep it real with y'all. I don't know if I can like use the word inspired. When I think inspired, I think like feels good, ethereal, light, ooh, ah. I think the word that still applies for me is I feel a mandate, a demand, a necessity. And oftentimes I ignore that mandate, demand, necessity. So if there's anything that is inspiring in this room, for me, it is the people sitting to the right and left of me. It is Dr. Jackson and her whole team. It is you all who are doing the work every day, day in and day out. I feel a necessity to leverage the experience of being a survivor with the idea that every day I don't know what I'm doing as a survivor. Like every single day. And even in this new season of being a parent, I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I ran away from being a parent for most of my life because I never wanted to be a parent, because I understood the ramifications that I experienced from my parents and what that did, not just on my childhood, but on my livelihood and my holistic life. So I feel a mandate to learn and to sit alongside people to learn. And I feel a mandate to share what I've learned and what I'm learning. And I feel a mandate to be a catalyst for change in my own life, which then by in part is a catalyst for change in the community and a change for other people's lives.
All right. Is that on? Is that on? Can you hear me? Oh, and there was, okay, more trauma to my phone. All right. So good morning, everyone. Again, I'm Martin Copeland, and Janae, thank you for saying that, because I agree. I don't know that I was inspired. I think I was pushed. That's the word I'm going to use. I definitely have been running from speaking about my personal experience. For me, I think something that may connect with many people, maybe even some of you in this room, because I love the people who cause me harm. And talking about my experience could cause them harm. And I avoided that for so many years. And especially in communities of color, as a Black man, there are certain things that we experience that are normalized. You know, some even celebrated. You may have heard someone brag about how they whooped their child behind because their child was just acting up. And you're like, you bragging about being, 5'10", 200 pounds and bringing a belt down on a 4-year-old? That's something to brag about? That's what I experienced. And so I felt called to have those conversations, because the things that are overtly abusive that we know, we talk about those things, but we don't talk about the things in our communities that aren't so obvious, that people carry around with us, that many of us could probably say we carry around with us. So that's why I wanted to be a part of this today. And also, I have to say, my incredibly gorgeous soon-to-be ex-wife is one of the members of this team. I say that because we're best friends, but we are divorcing, and that's okay, because it's a healthy divorce. Praise the Lord. But she is a member of this incredible team that put this on, and I have to mention her because without her, my healing would not have happened.
And I'm last to go. So let's see. I'm not going to use the word inspired either. I have done a lot of work on my trauma, and parenting is hard. Trauma sucks. And that's the nice word to say about it. But in 2018, I had my life all figured out. I had figured out how to live with my trauma. I had been estranged from my family for 5 years, and not like in another state, meaning that they lived 5 minutes down the road from me and we did not talk. I had my boundaries set up. I was in control of who came in my apartment, who didn't, where I went, how I did things, everything. And then I met who's now my wife, who changed my world. And she said, I love you, but I'm not going to do this. And it called me to work on my trauma in different ways. And then the door came knocking and said, hey, would you like to be a dad? And on May 2nd, 2020, and my family embedded in me that I could never be a parent, because if I was to be a parent, I actually feared that I would kill my child because of my trauma and not knowing what to do about it in terms of being a parent. I had no idea that being a parent to my adopted child, who is mine, adopted through kinship adoption, but she has her own trauma. I have no idea what it looks like to be a parent with trauma, significant trauma, parenting a toddler with trauma. And I said I would never re-enter therapy again. Kids change that. Parenting changes that. And I remember this not being a topic that I had anyone else to talk to about until being in Wegmans with Martin and Siobhan and being able to openly talk about parenting, trauma, struggling. And this needs, I also felt mandated to be a part of this because you can't change things. You can't offer support. You can't grow and heal without being able to have a safe space to have conversations. And you can't figure out what a safe space is for you until you're given an opportunity to explore what that means for you personally, because it may not be the same for me as it is for anyone else on this panel. And that's what made a difference for me and my journey. And it is my hope that by me having this conversation, being a part of this work, that the support for my daughter's trauma may not, hopefully, will not be as significant and detrimental to her well-being in her life as my trauma was for such a long time.
Thank you. Thanks for all of you for sharing about that. As we move along, you'll notice also there are microphones up here as we'll delve into a topic or a question for any of the panelists to comment on. But also if you all have particular questions that are sitting here and you want to come up to the mic or a question or comment, and I believe somebody is also monitoring our online community. Welcome to all of you in the online community as well. Welcome. We want to welcome you as well. So, when we're talking about this subject, trauma and breaking the cycle of trauma, oftentimes, when we talk about the subject of trauma can be intergenerational, right? Intergenerational. So, it can travel through family lines, family systems, bloodlines. A person may experience their mother or father experiencing trauma, and then maybe they might have kids and maybe exhibit, same trauma perpetrated towards someone else. And we see it a lot of times in the case of abuse as well. Let's entertain the question. And again, any of the panelists can jump in. When we talk about trauma, what does breaking the cycle of trauma mean to any of you? As a trauma survivor and as a parent, what does breaking the cycle mean to you? Anybody can chime in.
For me, breaking the cycle means unlearning. I mentioned earlier, culturally, there are certain things that, certain values that we have. For example, sort of this idea, this notion of parenting from authority, and an authority that is sovereign, and an authority that cannot be challenged, an authority that intimidates, and an authority that basically says what you say. And for me, it means unlearning that and parenting from a place, from an authority that is collaborative, an authority that is empathetic, authority that is soft, an authority that is gentle, that has the confidence that I am still in charge, that I am still leading, but I don't need to demonstrate this with an iron fist. For me, breaking this cycle means listening to my children. When my 9-year-old Jackson said to me, he said, "Daddy, you're mean." And my first response, because I'm Black, was, Dr. Jackson, I promise you, I'm not gonna cuss today. I'm a cusser, y'all, so I'm just gonna keep my mouth together. But I'm just gonna give you an idea of what I wanted to say to my child. "Daddy, you're mean." And in my head, I was like, you don't pay no bills in this house. I can be mean if I want to, because that's what would have been said to me, right? And because I have sat in therapy for the last 11 years, I was able to say to my son, "What do you mean by that? Unpack that for me." I love my parents, but they never asked me to unpack anything but the suitcases we packed after we traveled to South Carolina.
They told you to pack a bag.
They were exactly right. When you pack your bag and you go, exactly. That's what would have happened. So for me, breaking the cycle is unlearning some toxic things.
Thank you. So perhaps even, I'm gonna let you can come up to and so perhaps too, with what you said, just generationally, when we know better, we do better. And in today's society and culture, I was having this conversation with one of my clients recently, therapy, group therapy, support groups and other models of healing are now more readily available. And so, sometimes, not in making an excuse standpoint, but sometimes there were certain things maybe that other generations before us didn't either have readily available or know how to access as well.
I was gonna say, in breaking generational curses and doing the work when you're in this field or you've done your own self-work. For myself, as an example of breaking generational curses, I realized that I have a daughter who's graduating college at the end of this month. So she wasn't excited about graduating. And I kept saying, "Why are you not excited about graduating?" And through her, what she revealed through her therapist was that she didn't want my mother to be present at graduation. So she couldn't get excited because of the environment that was going to be coming to San Diego to celebrate her or the individuals. And because I'm no contact with my mother, I never stopped them from having contact with her. But not knowing that in my healing and her not having contact with her because she was destructive, but not wanting my kids to have not wanting to put my issues on my kids, allowing them still to have access to them, how she affected them. So in her therapy, she realized that, okay, I don't want this person present because you don't know how to behave in public because of her behaviors. And it did not make my daughter feel comfortable or excited about graduation. So she said, "Ma," we had the conversation. She said, "I'm gonna tell Grandma I do not want her at the graduation." And I don't have any contact with her. So this is her full decision, but through her own lived experiences with this person. So in that, I just got very fearful because of the reaction that I knew my daughter would get by having the conversation, but I knew that I had to allow her to speak her piece and say her piece, because in breaking generational curses, we were taught not to say anything. When somebody said earlier, you're at these family functions with your abuser, you're in these environments, and it's like, okay, our generation has been told to be quiet. "Oh, that's Uncle such and such," or "That's Aunt Vern." That's just how they are. Well, our children are not allowing that
Mm-mm.
They're not, and they're not giving space to it. So in breaking generational curses, then sometimes as a parent, you have to allow your kids to speak their piece and be in their piece, because we did not have that voice. They have that voice, and honoring that voice. And my biggest, and she said, Mom, what's your fear? Because we have been very communicative about, like, unpack that. Let's unpack that. So in that, the conversation that we had, I never had the opportunity to have. And that was healing for myself as well, because it was healing my person who didn't have a voice. So in that, I said, my fear is that the reaction you'll get, because I don't want any harm to come to you, but I cannot control that. So then I have to pray, but support you in what you want. And what she revealed to me later was that while she was having a conversation with my mother, she was looking for the reaction that she saw my mother have towards me. But my mother couldn't come with that same response because of the way my daughter was coming. So it was more manipulative, and she was able to discern that early and say, okay, this is not what we're talking about. Now you're demeaning my feelings because this is my experience with you. So in that, just so much to unpack, but just breaking generational curses and allowing that space and allowing them to honor their feelings and be there, but also be supportive and not trying to mitigate it or not trying to manipulate it or make it look good.
Okay.
And just let it be what it is.
Thank you. That's good. Thank you. With that, all of the panelists here have experienced various types of traumas. And we want to look at and consider for the panelists, and this will be a question that we'll have each of you answer. And we're going to keep all of the responses. We're going to do it like church for a moment. We're going to keep all the responses to 2 minutes because we have some ground to cover. All right. What is it that each of you feel you have to break or needed to break, that you have to break or needed to break of a traumatic nature that you experience personally? Feel free to share in as much simplicity or detail as you desire. And we'll have each of you do that and go around 2 minutes.
So the traumatic experience that I had that I still wrestle with to this day, I believe it started with the sexual trauma, the silencing that came with that you better not tell anybody or else. It was a form of bullying and intimidation. And I was 7 years old when the sexual trauma first began. And so I have wrestled my entire life with using my voice, speaking up for myself, advocating for myself when in situations when I may be done an injustice or wronged in some way. Because of that initial trauma at the age of 7, I have often stomached how I felt and suppressed how I felt. And that was further trauma inducing. And so as a parent of a 4-year-old, having now the ability to look retrospectively at my life, both my wife and I are our son using his voice. If there's something mommy or daddy does that he doesn't like, tell us. If there's something that someone else does or says that you don't like, it's okay to say something. Teaching him the importance of emotional regulation. You expressing emotion doesn't make you an angry Black boy. It makes you a healthy human being. So that's what I would say.
Along those same lines, I would say I would call it the triple S that comes with being a survivor. My experience is I was adopted out of foster care, and then my home was very abusive, both sexually and physically. My father is a convicted felon, but he was a police officer. So when, the gentleman earlier was talking about when people are in uniforms and they look like the people that are supposed to keep you safe. Well, your father's supposed to keep you safe, and he's an officer of the law, so he's supposed to keep the community safe. But, this is happening. So I would say for me, the 3 S's that have always come up with being a survivor of both physical and sexual assault is stuffing, suffering, and silence. And that is the trauma that that as a result of experiencing trauma, that is the behavior that I adapted in order to cope. Stuffing, suffering, and silence. And really what that equals is moving through life scared. I could easily say like, Dion, that was a great question, but bro, I'm not inspired. Like I'm inspired when I look out at these people. I'm scared. I walk through my days most of the time scared of what's going to happen if I say this, what's going to happen if I look like this, what's going to happen if I do this, scared. I sent what was it, babe? Oh, shout out to my husband, y'all. He's the support team. I sent something yesterday and it was done. It was off in the ether. And I was rereading it after it was done. And he was like, what are you reading it now for? And I was literally like, I'm scared that I might have said something wrong. I can't resend it at this point. We have reached the limit of unsend. And so the thing that I am actively working to break in my healing journey, which continues every day and in our home, is speaking up, not moving through life afraid. We have all types of, our children, regardless of our home, are living with all types of different experiences, from our daughter waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning last week because she was having nightmares about code red drills that they're doing in their school, and the trauma that comes with living through life scared. And so actively working on how to empower not myself, not just our home, but our children and our communities with how to move through life feeling the fear and sitting assured in who we are and what God has for us and what our purpose is, and in the fact that we are okay, we are safe, we are covered, we are protected, and using our voice is not going to shatter anyone or anything. It's just going to set us up to sit in the assurance that we already have, that doesn't need to be forfeited to live free.
So my trauma is violence in my home. And I want to be specific. It's not physical violence where my parents were hitting each other. They were hitting me, but not so much the violence between them in that way. But the violence between them was just emotional and violent arguments and name calling and throwing things and turning over tables and breaking down doors, and just something for that to a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old is absolutely terrifying. And so what I'm breaking is masking. So have you ever had to yell at or discipline a child and you're getting them together and then you say to them, get yourself together. Stop that crying, straighten up your face. That's how I've lived my life. Whatever I'm dealing with in my head, get it together. Most of our most violent family arguments and fights happened in the car on the way to church on Sunday morning. And by the time we walked up those church steps, all 4 of us would smile and say, bless the Lord. Good morning. Praise the Lord. How you doing? Blessed, I'm feeling blessed and highly favored. We would sing them songs, pray and read those scriptures, and nobody knew. So in my home, when something hurts, we say, ouch. That is what I am breaking. We have a right to say ouch and to say it as loudly and for as long as we need. We have the right to ask for Band-Aids, for peroxide, and whatever we need to heal, because we don't mask in our home.
Okay, my trauma involves sexual abuse, physical abuse, medical neglect, and sexual assaults in the community during my young adult years. What I am working through the most, that is still a really long journey, is my own self-image. That really is significant to my parenting journey, because when I feel unworthy, when I feel Like my very existence is a mistake. There's no way for me to interact with my daughter in a healthy, positive way because I'm projecting all the crap that I'm holding and all that doesn't feel good. And what I'm seeing is that that's my fault, that I could have protected my sister, but I didn't. That the cops were right when they made me, in between getting the safe exam and medical intervention, I was alone in a room having them say, we don't understand why cerebral palsy affected your ability to fight back. So can you physically demonstrate to us what was happening? And then they still didn't understand. So I was repeating it and repeating, showing them in between getting the safe exam and medical intervention. But I was the only one in the room. So I thought it was my fault. I still wrestle with my disabilities are not a reason that I shouldn't be able to fight back. I still wrestle with that I'm not a real man because I'm only trans because of my sexual abuse. And because I've had doctors not sign off on gender affirming care because of my sexual trauma, that I am destined to not be a parent and my child will be taken away if anyone knows I'm on anti-anxiety medicine again, or I'm on antidepressants, or that I'm even in therapy or in a intensive outpatient program. It's not the fact that I'm choosing to get help. It's the fact that I'm a parent struggling, so therefore my child's not safe. Those are all the messages going through my head from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to sleep. When I'm hugging my daughter, when I'm getting her ready for school, when I'm dropping her off, when I'm making dinner, those are the voices in my head. And I'm still working with them. That is the biggest thing for me.
Thank you all for sharing your stories of trauma and challenge. As we see and hear the early childhood traumatic effects, social learning, parenting, family of origin, community engagement, involvement, interaction with some law enforcement, right? Can have a profound effect on people and their mental and emotional well-being, the challenges and the struggles. Oftentimes we say to clients, make the connection for clients between what happened when you were 4, 6, 8, 12, 17, et cetera, and how it is affecting you now at 35, 40, 45. You know, it's profound. The psychological, emotional, and behavioral responses. These are some great people sitting up here this morning who have survived trauma and are, you know, actively parenting and working to break the cycle of trauma with their own kids. But a lot of their trauma was started at home. A lot was started at home. And there is a saying that many people grow up with, heard things. How many of you can raise your hand have heard, or you know somebody who's heard the saying, what goes on at home stays at home, you know? Right. And so what happens is with children, teens, young adults, as Janae said, there can be a lot of stuffing. I don't, and many of the panelists have said, I don't have a voice. I can't I can't speak. It's not a safe space for me to express myself and express my emotions. And that becomes really tough when we look at a family system, and from a family system perspective, the notion of what goes on in the family and the household stays in the household. We know now that it's unhealthy, that it is irrational to adopt that sort of belief system. Now, for many of you who grew up in those sort of settings and environments, that was the messaging, right? That's what you heard constantly. That's what you experienced. And you're looking to, or anybody out here online, you're looking to your parents. You know, your parents they're the first sort of social microcosm. Your parents give you an orientation into the world. So you learn or not learn about yourself, the world. You know, I can trust people. I can't trust people. There's a safe space or not a safe space for me to express myself, etc. Because many of you have been in family systems where the messaging may have been horrible to you, about you, and you experienced trauma, and the messaging about that trauma to you, we know has been unhealthy and irrational. The question comes into play, and we will do a round robin with all of you to answer this question. How, with all that you all have shared and just revealed to us, and I know because I'm a therapist, so I can feel this right now. So if I'm pausing, I'm feeling stuff as I'm talking. How do you all, as you all are parents sitting up here, there are biological parents, the step parents, their adoptive parents. They're all parents. Well, they're all parents. How do each of you know what healthy parenting looks like? How do you know what healthy parenting look like today? And anybody can jump in, no particular order. 2 minutes.
I guess I'll go first. And to put it point blank, I know that healthy parenting doesn't look like how my parents did it. And that's not shade. That's
True.
I understand that they did the best that they did with the skills that they had and with all that they were dealing with. But while I say that, none of what happened to me was okay, and it will never be okay. But I do know from therapy, I've had good therapy and bad therapy. The bad therapy showed me that parenting like my parents is unhealthy. And the good therapy helped me see the parenting like my parents is unhealthy. It's not safe, it's abusive, but it also allowed me to work through continuously my trauma and figure out, like, the voice I'm hearing in my head is just a voice. It's my past, it's my trauma, it's my abuse. I acknowledge it's there, but if I parent as if that voice is in the driver's seat, that's unhealthy. If I parent as if I'm acknowledging those voices, but yet I'm in the driver's seat and I'm choosing to do things differently, and I'm choosing to work with support to figure out what healthy parenting looks like, because I don't know, then that means I'm trying. And I'm trying to do it differently. And that to me is how I know the difference.
as Chris was talking, I'm looking out in the audience at your faces and it just clicked. You are why I know what healthy parenting looks like. And I know everybody in this room knows the importance of their roles and what you do in the community, what you do in the work that you do. But I've had, over the past 15 years, I've had like 7 therapists. And, you know, for various reasons, therapists is like kind of like dating. You kind of got to figure out, you know, who does it for you. And I had this one therapist and she said, you know, we'd gone through the sort of family history stuff. And she said, Martin, talk to me about how you were disciplined. When I described my discipline, she took a deep breath and she sat back and she said, Martin, that's abuse. Mm-hmm. And I said, no, that's Black. And she said, Martin, because I did, as you can see, I use humor to cope. And so she got very serious and she said, Martin, that's abuse. She said, how old were you when that was happening? And I told her, you know, I was disciplined like that throughout my childhood, as early as 5 or 6. And she's like, you think that that's okay to do to a child? Even if you did something wrong, did you do something wrong enough to deserve that? That just completely changed my train of thought. And I'm so glad, let me tell you, I'm so glad that that conversation happened before I became a father. I know what healthy parenting is because of intervention from professionals who are bold enough and compassionate enough to say to me, Martin, I need to reframe this for you.
Mine is very similar to what Chris and Martin shared. Because as the saying goes, like, we only know what we know. What we experience is what we actually live out and elevate. Let's see. Trying to figure out like how to frame this. The pursuit, my pursuit of wanting to break generational cycles look like continuing the unhealthy habit of stuffing, silence, and suffering. And that manifested in a way of me honestly living a lie of never wanting to be a mom, never wanting to be a parent. And I didn't want to enact the role, the responsibility, the job, the duty, all the things that, you know, anyone who is a parent in any way, shape, or form volunteers for, is the gravity of the impact of our actions on another human who is helpless. And the helpless is the real word. We are their help every day, right? Their community, their village, we are their help. And so when I became a parent, and I'm glad that the years of therapy superseded, because as a child who got beat regularly, I was 9 when I called the police on my father, who was the policeman the first time. And it was not because of abuse that was happening to me. It was because I literally thought that my mother was going to die. And watching that and being like, we got to get help, because my little 75-pound body and my brother's little 95-pound body, we not making it work. He's slinging us around like slingshots. Like, we got to get another adult in here. And so the hand of only knowing what you know, I was 28, 29. And about at that point, I probably had 15 years of therapy. 28, 29, when had the same similar experience about, you know, how do I feel about, it was, the question was, how do you feel about corporal punishment? Red flags went off. I mean, I could have smoke screen, rocket ships like flew by, I feel like in the conversation, because it probably took from 29 to 32 for me to really understand that hitting another human being is wrong. not just unwarranted, not abuse, but like at the fundamental principle, if we're teaching kids and being an educator help, because if I'm teaching you don't hit, but then I turn around and hit you, I'm teaching you to hit. What feels so ingrained and insatiated in here, not in here, but in here, my head knowledge, every day has to be rewired, has to be replaced. And it only comes with people who have different experience, different exposure, different education. If there's one thing that I could aspire you to do, and I don't know if I'm supposed to be doing this, but if there's one thing I could aspire you to do, start if you're not on the socials for whatever reason. I just got back to social after like a 6-month hiatus, and I have been watching so many parenting videos. Dr. Becky, she can come pull up in my couch at any moment. I said to my husband, I was like, I think we need to become members of the good inside tribe. Like, because we need help. And that's where I get it from. Write a book, start a podcast, like, because there are the community of people who are survivors need support, because we are retraining our brain on what's healthy. We are retraining our brain on what is whole. We are retraining our brain on what is norm. We are retraining our brain on how to replace a behavior, not just say, I'm not going to do that. So if I'm not going to do this, what am I going to do? And what does that look like? What does shepherding a young child without shame look like? What does compassion and correction look like? What does empathy and still instilling a desire for excellence and ambition look like? I've learned that from people like you. I still learn that from people like you. I'm finally at 40, like, okay, sign me up. Maybe I'm ready to be a mom. I inherited a beautiful bonus baby who just, good Lord, I don't talk about that, but good Lord, light of my life. But now I'm like, okay, now I'm ready, because what doesn't get healed literally gets handed down. There is no way to reduplicate what you haven't replaced.
It's good.
I think for me, well, let me make this disclaimer. I by no means have perfected parenting in the 4 years that I've been a parent. It's still very much a challenge that I need therapy for and prayer. But I would definitely say that it's hard for me to say how I know what healthy parenting is, because you can glean from someone else's experiences, and from your perspective, the way that they raised their children was good because maybe they turned out well, they went to college and graduated and they have successful careers, but we don't know what they are like from an emotional perspective in terms of that parent-child relationship. So I learn and glean from people in my life who are like fathers, who are like mothers, to maybe challenge my perspective on things. For example, as it relates to discipline, I also grew up in a household where my mother was the one who beat me. She was the physical disciplinarian, but my father intimidated me with his words. And he told me one day, the reason why I never put my hands on you is because my father would beat me with the buckle of his belt to discipline me, like in my face. And so he used his words to instill fear into me. He also would beat me, and as Martin mentioned, stop crying. Well, you beat me, of course I'm going to cry. And then tell me not to cry. And then he would say things like, men don't cry. And so a lot of that thinking subconsciously has been like ingrained into me. And so I'm realizing as I'm parenting how much of it has been inside of me. And so in addition to that, as being a man of faith, my relationship with God helps me, I believe, to parent in the most healthy way possible. I remember having a moment where, full disclosure, I lost my temper. My son was probably 6 months old. This was my first experience with having a newborn. I didn't grow up raising, my nieces and or nephews. I'm like, what in the world is going on? Why is this child screaming to the top of his lungs, sun up and sun down? And I lost my temper. And I felt validated in that because I said, I'm a human, I have emotions. And although I do, I heard God say, you need to apologize to him. Our children deserve apologies.
Oh.
And that in of itself is a very healing and healthy thing to teach your child. We still apologize to our child to this day. He will say, Daddy, that hurt my feelings. Mommy, that hurt my feelings. And we'll say, Alex, I'm so sorry that hurt your feelings. Let's talk about this. What hurt your feelings? And talking through it and hearing his voice. So I'm still figuring out what healthy parenting looks like. Sometimes it is trial and error. Sometimes it is, I feel really good about this decision. I think that was the best decision. And a few weeks later, that probably wasn't the best decision. So I have yet, if anyone has found the manual on perfect parenting, please send me the book on Amazon and I will read it. But I'm still very much figuring it out. But I would say it's from a natural perspective, it is most definitely experience with people. It is from a divine perspective, my relationship with God, and also me attempting to think about all of the things that I would have wanted as a child that I did not get, that I was deprived of, and being able to give that to him.
Thank you all for answering that question and sharing that valuable information with us. Let's give them a round of applause for sharing that. So we talked about trauma, what trauma is, what it looks like, family origins of trauma, the effects, the impact, the messaging that it has on a person, and the effects that it can have with people today, how it can show up. As we look into the arena of healing trauma, healing the trauma, look at healing the trauma and what that looks like, hope and restoration. There's two things we want to consider concerning healing trauma. We want to consider number one, resources that have been proven to be helpful, proven to be effective. We're going to let the panel talk about that in a bit for them personally. I will say, as a clinical therapist, one of the resources, definitely some individual trauma specific counseling focused with trauma with somebody certified or trained like me. You can't come to me right now though, because I'm full, sorry. But that can be one type of resources. And then the notion of, when we talk about healing, somebody has something has went wrong. We were abused, we were neglected, we were treated wrongly. So this notion of forgiveness, that's a word. One of my clients who has some challenging family dynamics, he almost cursed at me in session when I told him the importance of forgiveness and really how it's more so for you than for the abuser. It does not mean that you are forgetting, and it does not mean you are not holding them responsible. But it does mean you are walking along a pathway, a process, a journey to release yourself, get yourself released from a lot of the resentment, the tension, the bitterness, the negative effects. So we're going to open it up to our panel. And as we stated earlier, if anyone wants to come up, ask a question, make a comment. But first, we'll have the panelists share any particular resources you found helpful for people who have experienced trauma. And then secondly, saying a little bit about where you are or not on your path to forgiveness. So anybody.
I'll kick us off.
Thank you, Wilson.
So the resources I have found helpful, I'm speaking from my own personal experience. The trauma disorders unit at Shepherd Pratt in Maryland. I had 3 different inpatient stays. That changed my life, especially because that led to me hearing that it was not safe for me to go home. That was a valuable resource. I was diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder at that time, and I really truly believe I would not be where I am today without that initial treatment. I have also done the day program at the Psychiatric Institute of Washington on their trauma disorders unit. I am part of the Survivors Leadership Council with HopeWorks of Howard County, and those programs, especially the creative expression, the telling this truth, it really created an opportunity for me to find my voice and have support and healing and with other survivors as well. And then having the trauma-informed therapy has been life-changing for me, and I still meet with that therapist monthly to check in, especially being a parent. The added stress can trigger my dissociation, and even though I'm in a much more stable space, I have to stay on top of that. Forgiveness. That word itself is a barrier for my healing. So, especially all the Christians that told me that my pain and suffering is my fault because I'm not forgiving. So I learned that that word is an immediate shutdown, an immediate barrier. So I changed the word. And now I say, moving forward. What do I need to move forward with my trauma? What do I need to move forward as a parent? What do I need to move forward in my life? What do I need to move forward to be able to not have a panic attack at the name of my parents being brought up? What do I need to move forward? And I have found that if anyone uses the word forgiveness, I have cussed them out. And I am, but I've learned from other survivors that being able to say, if that word is a struggle for you, let's pick a different word. What word works for you to have that conversation? And if the word forgiveness works for you, great. I can still have a conversation, but don't tell me my word. Moving forward is wrong. Let us both use the words we need on our journey for healing.
Thank you so much for that, Chris. Let's give him a round of applause for that. Good. That was a good learning moment for me as a therapist too, with working with my clients. Just being aware that possible words can trigger people, certain words. So thank you for that. Appreciate you sharing that. That was awesome. Mr. Copeland.
Yeah, thank you. I have to say thank you because as you're talking, I've always struggled with the word forgiveness because I think sometimes when we say, have you forgiven someone, you know, even as a kid, you're taught to forgive people and it means let it go, you know, forget that it happened, excuse the behavior. And, you know, I was like this and I've seen this in my 9-year-old in Jackson. I'm gonna tell you a quick story. All right. We were in New York visiting Siobhan's family, and Jackson was outside with his twin cousins who were 3 months younger than him. And there was a little boy next door who had done something wrong to his cousins. To this day, I don't know what that boy did to his little cousins, but Jackson, and I have to give you this framework. You know, we live here in Prince George's County in an apartment, and my sister-in-law and her husband live in this grand, beautiful home in upstate New York. And so it's a little bit of Jackson is the hood cousin, just a little bit. So Jackson, this boy did whatever he did, and Jackson, well, I'm inside playing with the dog, and my other nephew comes in screaming, Uncle Martin, go get your son, go get your son. I'm like, oh Lord, I get up, I run outside, and that's not what I said. I run outside, and Jackson is in this little boy's face, and he said, no, you need to say sorry. That's not right. You need to say sorry. And I said, because you know I have to think first. I said, Jackson, what did he do? And Jackson said, he needs to say sorry. And I realized that I'm a lot like Jackson. You got to come correct with me. If you have harmed me, you owe me some form of justice, whether that's an apology, an admission of your wrong, compensation, because sometimes your wrong owes me a couple of dollars. Okay, let's be clear. This therapy is expensive. Okay, so when I think about forgiveness, for me, the specific type of forgiveness that I need is unmasking. You know, I talked about masking earlier being a coping mechanism for me, and you know, so much so that I was actually sexually assaulted in college by 2 bandmates. I was in the marching band, 2 guys, and nobody knew it. Literally, nobody knew it until over 15 years later when I told Siobhan. I never spoke about it, and no one would have ever known because I became an expert at masking. So for my parents, for example, now let me be clear. My parents, there's very much a line, and there's like on one side, there's the trauma and the abuse that we experienced growing up, my sister and I, my twin sister and I. And on the other hand, anyone who knows my parents, Danae can tell you, Kelvin can tell you, my parents are incredible. Like, my parents are community parents. They're the type of parents where every baby is their baby. You know what I mean? They're those parents who, they were the coaches, they were the youth leaders, they did it all. They are incredible people, but they were hurt and they were unhealed. So part of the unmasking that I needed from them, whether you share your trauma with me or not, we're going to take these masks off. We're going to have to, I require people who harm me to have authentic conversations with me and to demonstrate agency over their own healing. If you are blaming, if you are putting things off on other people, we cannot be in relationship. You have to own your part in the harm you cause other people, and specifically in the harm you cause me or my children or whomever, if you're going to continue in relationship with me. That's my boundary. I cannot have people in relationship with me who don't own their actions and don't take those masks off.
Thank you. We're going to go to the audience. Please, she's been waiting patiently.
I want to kind of rewind a little bit. We were talking about parenting, the last question. And one of the things that my mom would share with me is that she didn't want to be the mother that her mother was. And she did not realize what kind of mother she was until I became a mother. And even from my bonus mom, I like to call her, they would always tell me, you're such a good mom. I couldn't fathom you not being a mom, because I became a mom for the first time at 16. And now I'm a grandmother, and I'm seeing what kind of mother I am I was to my oldest daughter, who's the mother of twins, and I have no idea how she does it, the patience that she has. But that is because I put I instilled those little seeds, those little nuggets that I got from my mom in her. And then my mom inserted those little nuggets in me that she didn't want to exemplify as a parent. And I wanted to tell the gentleman that there's no manual. It's learn as you go, baby. I'm a grandmother, and I still haven't learned how to, I'm not going to say effectively be a parent, but you never really truly know how to be a parent. It's just learn as you go.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. McCray, I'm going to ask you a specific question based upon your social media posts recently and the theme that has been mentioned a few ways and a few times in this room today. I think it's beneficial for us to unpack this question. You posted, and I quote, "You can't cover up trauma with spirituality. The trauma will raise its head until you deal with it." I'm adding this little part. He didn't say this, but those of you from a Judeo-Christian perspective, he said, you have to take your pain to Jesus and sometimes therapy to experience healing. Part of the work that I do a lot of integration, and in addition to being the self-care therapist. And by the way, afterwards, down the hall to the left, I have my book, Non-Negotiable Self-Care, and some t-shirts. I'll talk about that later. But I do a lot of work integrating mental health and spirituality. I have the blessing and curse of both being clergy and clinician. So I do a lot of integration with my clients who want it around mental health and spirituality. You know, I do talks in reference to faith, mental health, and healing. And so many of my clients come from various types of spiritual or religious background, not just my own. So I've been trained to work with my clients out of whatever their spirituality is, whatever gives them meaning and hope. And it might not be an organized religion. It might be like nature, or it might be their profession, whatever it is. You know, I've been trained to kind of work with that with my clients. But a lot of times we historically, let me say this, historically in some spiritual religious foundations, everything's just been, you know, just go to church, just go to prayer, just pray over it, read your Bible, or read your Quran, or read your manual, read, you know, or do your rituals, whatever it is. So we know we cannot throw, I'll say it like this, we cannot throw a band-aid of spirituality over trauma. It has to be dealt with. You can incorporate, therapy, maybe some medication for your anxiety, and prayer. Oh yeah, they can all work together. But I just wanted to know from our panelists, what do you think about that? The not covering up your trauma with spirituality by itself. What do you think about that? Anybody from our panelists? What do you think about not covering up your trauma with spirituality alone?
How do I answer this question?
Is your mic on?
Can you all hear me?
You can
Okay.
hear.
I was trying to think of the best way to answer this. Starting with myself, growing up in the Pentecostal church and seeing a lot of the emotionalism and, as we would call, shouting and dancing, but a lot of these people will go home broken still. And I too was one of those people, and wonder, why is the pain that I feel so deep? Why do I still wrestle with sometimes not wanting to be here, feelings of depression and constant anxiety, and different ways of wanting to self-medicate to curb the pain or to quiet the pain. And I, through my faith experience, learned that spirituality is not intended to be a cover-up of the trauma that lives beneath the surface.
Good.
And I, in my faith journey, wanted to take the pain to God and ask him to heal it, because he kept showing me that it was coming up. It was coming up in my fear of intimacy, even in a healthy sense of platonic relationships. I was afraid to get too close to men because I feared what their motives were. I feared intimacy with women because I've had, a total of maybe 9 abusers in the first 20 years of my life. I had trust issues. It showed up in my relationship with God because I said, how could a good God allow such a horrible thing to happen to an innocent child? Intimacy had a fracture in it. And no matter how much I went to church, no matter how much I read and studied the Bible from cover to cover, no matter how much I prayed, I had to address the cracks in my heart. And that is the journey that I have been on, of addressing the trauma and not allowing the trauma to dictate my life and to cause me to live from fear, as you mentioned. I lived in the context of fear in every relationship that I had. There's so much that could be said on this. I can't say it all, so I'll just speak from my perspective.
Thank you. Anybody else want to comment on
I
that?
can just really quickly make a request of everyone listening. When it comes to your clients, your patients' faith experience. Oh, sorry. Chris talked earlier about forgiveness being something, a barrier for him, that word. And like, I can't deal with that. I don't bring that to me. When you're working with someone who may have a faith background, and they're experiencing some disconnect with it, and they feel like they need to disconnect with it, they feel like they need to challenge it, they may need to step away. Please affirm that. Please don't keep reinforcing, you just need to pray. Hold on to God's unchanging hand. You might need to let go of God's unchanging hand for a moment. Because if we really believe in God the way we say we do, then we know that he hasn't let go of us. So let that person take the space that they need. As a queer person, church was a place of harm for me. It was a place where I was told that I could not be who I was. And I know a lot of people had that experience. And it caused confusion, trauma, and stress for me. So when I walked away from church, I can't describe to you the level of peace that I started to have and the real connection and understanding of God that I gained. Because I wasn't experiencing God anymore through people. I was experiencing finally a direct connect. I even started doing things like I stopped gendering God. God is them, they, us, he, she, and yes, girl. God is all of that. God is whatever I need God to be, because God is. But I would not have gotten to that place in my spirituality had my therapist said, you got to pray through this. Keep going to church. If you need to break from that, then you need to break from that. If you need to experience faith in a different way or not at all, that's what you need to heal. Please affirm that with the people that you work with.
Thank you.
One of the things that I was introduced to much later on in my therapeutic journey, because I went through disclosure at 13. And at 13, they're not using words like projection. You're projecting. Like I hit projection around 30. I was like, oh, what's this projecting thing? Right. And so when I engage with anything, if we aren't aware of us being a projector, then we go and we project. Mm-hmm. And the meaning of anything becomes the meaning that I assign to it. Right. So if I assign the meaning of, oh, what you said, like, how could a good God let something so bad happen, right? For me, I shared last year when I shared my story, right? We weren't right here, but here with you all, I spent most of my life wondering if I was a mistake. I thought that my birth parents chose the wrong A and I should have been aborted as opposed to adopted, because why would God let me live through physical and sexual abuse from age 5 on? So when I go to church and I interface with God, I'm projecting onto faith what it is that I want to get back, what it is that my experiences are. And it wasn't until I learned about projecting and assigning meaning to things that I realized that I had assigned the wrong meaning. We say like, oh, God's going to heal you. God's going to save, God's going to this, whatever it is, like, boom, the universe is fill in the blank, whatever it is. And at a certain point, I realized that after I stopped assigning a meaning to things, and I kind of disconnected from religion as a practice and started being connected to learning and scripture and reading and studying, and the integration of mental health and faith, I started to understand that there's a difference between salvation and healing. Salvation happens in an instant. Hello? Hello. You, so, Martin, don't distract me. Healing happens over time. So I had to designate the difference between salvation and soul work. And God cares about our soul. And that is very different than where we might or might not spend eternity or what happens to us after we pass through this human body. And so learning how to take care of my soul and learning how to get to the seat of all the roots that were impacted by my lived experiences in this human body and that impact that it had on my soul helped me shatter this notion of if God fill in the blank.
This is so awesome and remarkable. Aren't these panelists just loading us with tremendous information? We could really go on for about another hour at least, but the time is escaping us. So we want to go down the path of kind of closing out. But one of the things that came up pretty strongly was this idea of self-care. And I think one of you has it already, but in my best-selling book, Non-Negotiable Self-Care, it addresses the importance of an individual looking at how they take care of themselves. What measures do they employ to engage in their own intentional, deliberate self-care? And there's a chapter there for men, women, couples, people in the workplace, religious leaders, and the elderly, a quiz for you to look at how you take care of your own self-care. But with that being said, we want to close with this and have each of you answer these two questions like a minute and a half. Like a minute and a half. Number one, as a parenting survivor today, how do you intentionally practice self-care in a diligent way? And then secondly, as a parenting survivor, what's one thing you would leave with our listening audience? So number one, how do you as a parenting survivor diligently and intentionally practice self-care? And then how do you, as a parenting survivor, how do you, or what would you leave with the listening audience? So no particular order, but each of you has 1.5 minutes.
The clock is ticking. I have not quite figured out what self-care fully looks like for me.
By my burden.
It's still very difficult. Me time is very important. My wife and I are big on that. Like every third Friday is her day, her mommy day. She said, don't call me. If the child needs something, figure it out. I'm going out. So I'm learning to integrate Ron's time. That's independent of everybody else. And therapy, I think in a sense has become like a form of self-care too, because through therapy, I'm learning how to take better care of myself, to tend to myself. Another form of self-care could be just very random. I'm a bit of a foodie. But I'm trying to make it a healthy food choices, healthy food choices that I can enjoy as a form of self-care. I'm sorry, can you repeat the second question?
Sure. What is one thing you would leave with our listening audience? Anything that you would say as a closing statement?
What I would leave with the listening audience is I have been, and I'm still very much on this journey of what Dr. Robert Marshall mentioned earlier of healing being the journey and wholeness being the destination. I don't yet know what wholeness looks like for me, but I know that I'm on the daily journey of healing. Yes, many of us have experienced trauma, but that doesn't have to be the end of our lives. There are so many resources available that can help you to not just address what has happened to you, but to continue to live, to unfreeze emotionally from those events that happen in your maybe childhood, or maybe some of you in your adulthood, and to begin to reclaim your identity, to understand who you were intended to be, or who you would have been before the trauma. I believe in the recovery of that identity. Maybe that's through trauma. For others, that may be through faith. Whatever that looks like for you, please know that you are worth living. Please know that you are valuable. Please know that your life has value and you were not a mistake. And for what it's worth, I am so sorry for what happened to you. I'm so sorry for what Christian said to you that was so hurtful and just not true. That was not your fault. None of it was. So that's what I would like to leave with you all.
Thank you, sir. How do you intentionally practice intentional self-care, and one thing you would want to leave with the listening audience?
Intentional self-care for me definitely looks like I have a routine that I call, if anybody's read the book Miracle Morning, Hal Elrod has a practice in there about rituals, and I call them like my rich rituals. We live in a rich life over here, like after trauma. But one of my rituals is scribbling. So his acronym is SAVERS, Life Savers. And it is, I'll just go through them so that way you have them if you aren't familiar with them. One of the S's is for scribble, S, affirm, visualize, and or verbalize, interchangeable depending on what you need on any given day. SAVE for exercise and or move your body, however you like to approach that. Y'all see me really spelling up here. R is for read, which has totally continued to transform my life. S, the last one is for, did I say scribble? The last one is for, what's the last S for? I think it's for scripture. And that is for whatever it could be a quote book, right? Like anything. So my S that I kind of live and die on for self-care is scribble. And it pairs with the emotion wheel. I hate that emotion wheel, but I love it so much because as a child who did all the S's, stuff, silence, all the S's, the emotion wheel has unlocked a portal into my soul that I didn't know accessed, and has helped me be able to process feelings that I didn't know was there. So many times when I'm scribbling in the morning, AKA what many of us would refer to as journaling, I'm really walking through things that I've experienced in my day-to-day life. I'm walking through how I would like to show up. I'm walking through how I feel. I love the emotion wheel because it gets past, so those two together, right? The emotion wheel and scribbling, like it gets past the top layer of like, I'm angry or I'm mad. No, I'm annoyed. I'm frustrated. I'm disappointed. I am resentful, right? Like I'm jealous, all of these things, right? And I'm able to really sit with my own thoughts and not have a purpose for them other than to get to know me. And so that's why it's a form of self-care, and it's definitely helped me show up in a much healthier way. What I would like to leave with the room as far as parenting is concerned, y'all are here on a Thursday and a Friday, and I'm like been holding back my tears throughout the whole joint. And on my journey as a child, as a individual, as a Black woman, now as a mom, y'all signed up for this. You paid some money for this. You took some time off. You arranged your schedules. You planned and prepared. And I feel like it's not just for, you're not the people who need to hear this, because you're the people who care. On my journey, I've come across so many people who do the work and care but lack compassion,
Mm.
who show up and are justified with their credentials, but are also judgmental,
Mm.
who are dedicated, but also don't know what to say out their mouth.
Mm.
Keep showing up for things like this. You all being here, and I don't know if this is healthy, not healthy, maybe Dion will pull me to the side. You all being here
Oh, no, you're fine.
validates us.
Yeah.
Even today at 40, I'm still looking for someone to say, I'm still looking for, it was Siobhan. She came over to the table. She was like, are you okay? You're by yourself. And I was like, yes. And I was like, I'm just writing this and I'm about to send it out. Maybe you can read it. And she was like, you want me to read it for what? I was like, I'm just looking for affirmation. It was real. For you all to practice in a way that pursues your clients, that pursues your patients, that pursues humanity in a different way really, really matters. Just as much as I carry and I can reflect on experiences that I had in the home, which led me to tables and rooms and in a field that I didn't even know existed as a 13-year-old. And I could talk about those traumatic experiences that happened in the home that led me to your room, your couch, your chair, your interview session. I could name a litany of traumatic experiences that came from being an experience of the experience. What you're doing matters more than you know. So pull that colleague up that you know is coming justified because they've done the work, they got the degrees, but they're a little judgmental. When that person leaves the office, they got something to say about them. That person, they knew that's something that they were saying about them before they ever said it to you in the break room. Continue to be a light in your workplaces, in your homes, in your community, because really, going back to Dion's first question, you all are what inspire me.
Thank you.
So now I'm gonna try to be a thug and not cry because you made them start. All right. First, what do I do for self-care? I have a classmate, Largo High School class of 2001. Shout out. I have a classmate who has become this incredible healer for women. And she's incredible. Her name is Tama Aziz Serwa, and she says her motto is heal everything. And so that's become sort of a mantra for me. I lost 80 pounds because listen, he's cute. All right. But well, he was always cute. He's just thinner. But I had to heal that because I was holding trauma in my body physically as a barrier to people. So you can stay away from me because I'm going to make myself undesirable to you. I isolated myself. So I had to go out and make friends, and be personable. I had to heal everything. That's self-care, therapy, really doing the work is self-care. But the thing that really has been it for me is play. My self-care is whether it's with those two crazy little boys, Jackson and Jet. When I say play, y'all, I mean literal play. Like, I mean, Daddy, you want to go to the playground? Can you take us to the playground? Sure, I can take you to the playground. Daddy, you want to play on the playground with us? Yes, I do. Play. We have our action figures and we fight and we create and we imagine. Getting in touch with that purest part of me has been powerful self-care. So that's that. What do I want to leave with you? Janae said something. She said, the work that you do matters. And I want to add to that. You matter. And in that thought, I'm going to tell you what I need you to do. Are you ready? This is my teacher, me coming out. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3, eyes on me. All right. Hey, come on, teacher. Yes.
Wait, what is that? I'm not a teacher. I missed it. I missed the moment.
It's a call and response.
Okay.
So here's what I need y'all to do. You ready? Use your PTO.
Thank you.
Okay? That's
Yes.
what we need y'all to do.
Good. That's good.
You need to use your PTO because you matter and because you aren't just a healer.
Mm.
You are a mom, you are a dad, you are a sister, a brother, a person, a musician. You're a twerker. Some of y'all in here, whatever, whoever it is that you are, you need to. You are saying, listen, we got some singers in the room. Like, you are a whole person outside of the work that you do. And here's why I need you to use your PTO, because when we show up on your couch, we need you to show up. We need you to be fully there. And the thing that some of you wonderful people, hey, Siobhan, don't remember sometimes is you cannot show up for everybody else 24/7. You cannot. There's a phrase that I had to learn about my children that I'm not going to repeat here, but I'm just going to say that I have embraced this idea that I am important too. And that a lot of times the people who are pulling on me, I'm an educator, y'all. So I got young people, I work in workforce education. So we see people from 14 to 100. I got people pulling at me right now, sending me emails right now. Mr. Copeland, have you finished reviewing my resume? No, I have not. I got 12 people in the queue and I'm not reviewing resumes. This was me last night. I'm not reviewing resumes today because I need peace to get ready for today. I need y'all to do that because you matter and the work that you do is unbelievable and exhausting and soul wrenching. So if you don't go get you a big drink, I'm talking about a good, my sis over here is feeling me. Girl, if you don't get you a big drink, a strong drink, you better, okay? Because you deserve it, not because of the work you do, but because you are a full human being.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
That was good.
It was.
It's funny because my boss gave us paid mental health day off today, and I'm like, well, it really matters. So that time, speaking of self-care, one, I did read the book. Martin told me about the book and I did read it. So shout out to I did.
So you like it?
I did. I even told you I liked it. It's really good because it's good. I don't want to take up my time, and what I like about it is it allows you to interact with it the way that you interact with it. It's not a prescribed one way for everyone. So I highly recommend the book.
So meet me at the table. Go ahead. Go ahead.
My self-care, two things. One, bouncing off what Martin said, playing with my daughter. She challenges my physically disabled, autoimmune, painful body when she is jumping on me because I'm bending over and picking up something. She's getting up, Daddy. And jumping off the couch onto my shoulder and wants me to flip her over and does it over and over. Daddy, roar like a dinosaur. And in those moments, my self-care, it takes me out of my crap and my trauma and makes me grounded in the moment. So much that I am learning that when she says, Daddy, come play with me, or let's go fishing, that I will actually put my laptop up or put my phone down and go enter that space with her. Second, the basics get really lost for me. I can easily forget to eat. I can easily forget to shower. There are so many needs, and my trauma made it so that I learned that I wasn't someone that deserved the basics. So my self-care, which I'm still working on in therapy, is figuring out how to stop and eat, figuring out how to sleep, figuring out how to say, no, I'm tired. This phone call or this email is going to wait until tomorrow morning, or I'm going to hand it off to someone else because I need a moment. Where that gets challenging is I feel like if I do that, then I'm not providing the help and support to someone that's in need. And if something happens in that time when I'm not on, then that is my fault. That is also connected to my trauma and losing a loved one due to suicide. But I've had to learn that I can't be everything for everyone, and that self-care allows me to show up as a parent. Without self-care, I don't have a chance at being or discovering what a healthy parent looks like for my child. And I want to model to her that self-care is okay. Not just okay, it is necessary. You deserve it. It is non-negotiable. And I learned that from the book. And I want to reinforce that what you do matters, that you matter, that take your PTO. And then once you do all that, I'm going to add something to your list. And it's not just your work, it's working with everyone in the community, the teachers that allow me to sit in their classrooms covered in self-injury scars, but said nothing. The neighbors that heard things and said nothing. The family member they saw and heard things, but would invalidate and say, well, you have a 2-parent household and you have a white dad. So what you're experiencing, you should be grateful because your cousins have it worse. Those are the people that need to be a part of the conversations. Those are the people that also probably have their own stuff that need healing. I've said that. Now I'm going to say something that I really, really need you to take away is children and adults with disabilities have trauma and experience a lot of different traumas without often having a way to communicate it in a way that's valued, especially in a culture that really uses people with disabilities as inspiration porn and that glorifies how hard and challenging it is to be a parent of a child with a disability. And that messaging can indirectly validate the abuse and harm that a child with a disability is okay. It makes sense because of how hard they are. I was that child. I have that child. And I am getting support and help and education and literally speak out when anyone is saying, because here's what I'm going to say. Is it hard? Yes, it's hard. Did we choose to have a disability? No, we didn't. Is our life just as valuable as yours, even on the hard days? Yes. And the same goes true for making space for gender nonconforming and trans people. The trauma is significant. And my transitioning into the man that I am and that I was meant to be blocked my access to trauma support that was geared only for women and children. I lost a huge wealth of support that was a part of my journey. So, in addition to all the communities that unfortunately need support in this, please don't forget those two. And I'm not saying y'all need to be the only one to do the work, because that's not true. We all need to do it. And we all need to create space for people that have healing in their trauma to hopefully make sure that future generations, this actually isn't a thing. That's a dream of mine. I'm hoping that I'm alive to see that. But just please, without everyone getting access, it's not going to happen. And with that, I will also reinforce that you matter, your life matters. We see you even when you feel unseen. We hear you even when you feel unheard, and you are not alone.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's give all of our panelists a round of applause for all of this great information that has been shared. We hope and pray that many of you have been benefited from this important panel discussion. Come on, let's give them all a round of applause again. All right, and we're gonna turn the rest of the day over. Thank you all.
We give Dion a round of applause as well for the phenomenal job he did.
And go get that book.
I'll be at the table.